Welcome back to the channel where today we're back on my Cummins Swap Viking here. But before we get into this video, let me just say if you're not already subscribed, what are you doing? Get over there, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button on this video. I post shorts just about daily and I try to post this thing every week or two, try to keep some long form videos here. So yeah, subscribe to the YouTube. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of September. So if you could hit that button, that would really help me out a lot. Also, if you're interested in seeing more short form stuff, head over to my TikTok and my Instagram. I post at least once a day, if not twice a day on those as well, if you want to stay up to date on everything that I'm doing. So with all that being said, let's get to today's video. This is where I left off last video. I had just built this piece, this 1-inch square tubing piece, runs across. I tied in the upper mounts to it. So now what I'm going to do is tie this into this hood latch here because there isn't a ton of support on this piece. This is just thin sheet metal. And then there's supposed to be bracing on the back side of this on the original truck. However, I'm not running that rad support anymore. So I'll have to tie the back of this into here and then build something to come off of here to support the hood latch. So I don't exactly know how I'm gonna do that, but that's what we're gonna jump into first. All right, so I have this plate built and it basically just backs the hood latch. So the hood latch had these nuts that were welded onto the back side of it. So I broke those off. So now the bolts go through the top plate, through the hood latch, through this backing plate for support, and then we'll have nuts on the back. And then these are still slotted to allow adjustment for the hood latch, obviously. So that's in there, that's all strengthened. Once that's welded up, it'll be good and solid. It'll hold the hood really well. So now the last thing with this bar that I'm gonna jump into, I basically just wanna support these two. Now they aren't doing a lot since I have this backing plate behind the hood latch now, but I still wanna at least have bolts in here. So I'm going to build something to basically come off of this bar up to here and up to this one as well. I'll figure something out. All right, so we got these brackets built up here, just something to kind of support this front panel that sits here with the hood latch on it. Nothing fancy, just a couple 90-degree brackets with nuts welded on the inside. Then I pulled the bumper back off, and I cleaned up my bumper brackets. Like I kind of roughly had them all in there before, sharp edges and whatnot, just to get the bumper in place. But once I had it in place, I could mark them and trim them and shape them and make them look a lot better, just physically look better. I also put a few more welds on them too, just to make them a little bit more sturdy so I don't break any tack welds. So then we put the bumper back on. Oh, I also pulled the power steering cooler off just to give me more room. I probably will end up using that cooler, but for the time being, for fitting the intercooler in here, I just wanted that cooler out of the way. So we pulled that off, put the bumper back on so we can kind of try and mock up some intercooler things. And then off camera, actually, I also built these uprights like I said I was going to do. It's tough to film, but I had it stopped right about here before. So now I have these uprights that come and they bolt onto this fender edge right here. And if we come around the backside into my fender well, you can see basically I just built from here on up with square tubing, attached it to the top, did that on both sides, just to give my radiator support a little bit more support, I guess. It gives the front end something to physically sit on, and gravity will hold it on there rather than just relying on the two bolts on each side to hold the entire weight of the front end. So those are something I just did off camera. Pretty boring, but still very time consuming trying to figure out those angles. So as I mentioned before, we're trying to fit an intercooler in behind this bumper here. This is an intercooler I picked up off of eBay. 3-inch thick core, 3-inch inlet and outlet to match the Cummins boost tubes. We've got bungs on the top and the bottom. It's not a huge intercooler, I get that, especially for a diesel engine, but this is as big as I can fit in there. And keep in mind, I have ordered two 10-inch puller fans to go on the back of this. And I have ordered an AC condenser that's just about the exact same size. So we're basically going to build a cooling stack. I'll have the condenser right in front of this, fans mounted right to the back, some sort of shroud setup. Should be about yay thick. And then once I kind of have those, I can kind of get this mocked up in here. I was really hoping to get this intercooler fitted on this episode, but I really need the fans and the condenser so I can assemble a cooling stack and put it in the truck and actually make it fit. So that being said, aside from the stuff underneath behind the bumper, it seems like all the stuff up here is actually done. I have my upper mounts, the rad's in here, the fans are in here, all that looks good. So I think aside from the stuff underneath, like I said, I think it's time to actually start jumping into firewall stuff. Now, that being said, to mount my booster and my steering column, I would like to have the inner fender in here to know how much room I have. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is trim my inner fenders. In the last video, you saw me pull out these shock towers here. I've seen on lifted trucks, you can just put a plate in here with a shorter shock. I don't know how high I'm going with a suspension lift on this, so I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but for the time being, I have the shock tower out. Just give me a little bit more clearance. And then if I do need to trim the inner fender later on to fit a shock tower, I will do that. But for the time being, I just want to trim it. Basically trim it around the radiator and get these mounted in so I can kind of have a pretty good idea. As you can see, it kind of follows this line here. So it will get kind of tight to a master cylinder and a steering column. So we're going to trim those up, get those installed before we start jumping into steering column and brakes. Well, as you can see, we have one inner fender installed. So it all fit up really nice over there, obviously, in the front top edge. Nothing there changed, so it all fits up really nice. I did a little bit of trimming along the frame rail just to kind of get it to follow the shape of the frame rail. Then I did notch a little bit over the shock tower here, nothing major. And then the big part was right here. So as you can see, this came straight up and over like this, which is directly in line with this top outlet of the radiator. So I basically cut this square out, I flipped it around and welded it back in with a filler piece down here. And it actually works pretty good. Once you have a rad hose on here, this obviously isn't the right size, but it gives me enough clearance for the radiator hose. So that looks good there. I do have just a little bit more trimming I'm gonna do down here where the radiator is. It's really tight. It's a nice fit, but it's just a little too tight for my liking. So I'm gonna trim a little bit off of there, but it still gives us a decent amount of room for all the power steering hoses. The reservoir still has to go down there, but all the power steering hoses, the brake booster hoses, and battery cables as well. So looks like we should be good. Eventually I'll have to cut a hole for the boost tube here, but until I have an intercooler down there, I don't know where to put my intercooler piping. So I'm gonna do a little more trimming on this one, and then we'll probably jump into trimming that inner fender up and getting it to fit. Well, as you can see, we have a full square complete now. We've got both inner fenders in, as well as the radiator. Kind of completes the whole look of the engine bay here. So this one wasn't quite as bad. I kind of just mirrored what I did on the other side to fit it along the frame rail. Thankfully, it fits nicely between the shock tower and the turbo. Now, I don't know if I'm sticking with this turbo, but either way, this fits quite nicely now. This side didn't need quite as much modification. As you can see, it just has this small little 3/4 inch nipple coming out of it. So just slice this down the middle, put in a V-shaped filler, and it gives me just enough room to fit a hose on there. When we come under here, I still need to figure out what to do for a lower radiator hose. It goes into the engine right around here. So I imagine I'll probably end up just taking this whole corner off to give me clearance to get the radiator hose in there, as well as the boost tube is going to come out somewhere around here and go straight down this way. So I'm not really sure how much of this area is going to stay, but for now it fits and it looks good. I need to wait until I have the intercooler and the AC condenser mounted down there before I can figure out how I'm going to be routing those hoses and the boost tube. That is going to conclude it for today's video. Really happy to get these inner fenders in here. It doesn't really seem like much, but when you have them installed and you have the rad in there, you get the full square. You get to kind of see how much room we're going to be working with for mounting tanks and mounting the Hydro Boost and all those other things, all the lines, the hoses, electrical, everything. It really kind of gives you an idea of where everything is going to sit and how much room you really have. So in the next video, now that we have this inner fender installed on the driver's side here, I can actually figure out where my brake pedal / Hydro Boost is all going to line up and work, as well as mounting a steering column and figuring out a steering setup to get to the box. Also, my AC condenser showed up today. My fans for the intercooler should be here next week. So if that's not in the next video, it should be in the one after that. We should kind of get an intercooler setup mounted behind the bumper like you saw with that intercooler I got. If you want to see that, you got to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe. Comment down below if you got any suggestions or you like what I'm doing. Also, follow us over on TikTok and Instagram. Try to do daily updates on there if you really want to see the up-to-date content on this truck. So with all that being said, be sure to subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.